Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about the Deuce Season 3, Episode 4. It is called They Can Never Go Home. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And we did a lot of theorising, probably all throughout the first couple of episodes, about where certain characters might end up. And what's weird is I feel like this episode did something we expected much earlier, but with a different spin, but also did something else that we expected and talked ourselves out of, and then it's just done it the way we originally thought it may happen, which is Frankie met his timely end at the end of the episode. Final shot of this one is Frankie lying there dying as Vincent holds him, as the camera pulls back and the bass comes in.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's the first time this season that the that final shot has really worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the season itself, it hasn't been bad, nothing like that. But the final shots have not had the impact that I felt in previous seasons until this episode.
So, yeah, and Frankie is making all sorts of enemies. It was not Rudy who was behind it, although there's a running theme throughout the episode that Rudy's not happy that he's not getting a cut of this movie business that he's involved in. He hears it from Irene. So to say the right one, at the shop, who's kind of trying to convince him, and then from Bobby of all places, which I just want to mention this scene briefly because Bobby says, "No, I don't want a slice of the apple pie that has melted cheese on top," which sounds disgusting to me, to be honest. But
I'm with you on that one, Bobby.
Yeah. He's like, I don't want that. I'm trying to, lose a few pounds. But I couldn't help but notice as soon as he said that, I looked at his plate that he was eating from, and it was like 2 giant waffles and lots of fried chicken, and I'm like, Bobby.
Yeah, but to be fair, it wasn't that plus an apple pie covered in cheese.
I know, but that's like getting a Diet Coke with a Mars bar. Like, there's no point. Just because it's better than having a regular Coke and a Mars bar doesn't change the fact that you're still not being healthy. Quit it. Stop pretending.
No, it's better. It's not the best, but it is factually better.
No, it's ridiculous. It's delusional to think that he's going to lose any weight eating that meal that he's having.
To be fair, he might if that's significantly less than what he usually eats. You don't know that.
Of course you're defending this. You have the world's worst goddamn diet. Of course you're trying to stick up for this. It's wrong. You're wrong. Deal with it. So eventually the other guy who's at the drug deals comes back to complain about the drugs again, and Frankie just lets his attitude get in the way again. And throws the money at him, tells him to get lost, and I'm like, damn, like it's not even just Rudy at this point. He's making enemies from all angles, and this is right after, of course, we have the birthday cakes because it's Frankie and Vince's birthday, and it's not the first time we've had them have a birthday. We heard the one more trip round the sun for the Martino brothers. That was a callback to before, and it plays well enough, but ultimately he goes outside and they start shooting at him, and it does this thing actually. The episode really. It almost hides that he's been hit for the longest time because he's running back up to the club. He's trying to make his way in. He's like banging at the door, let me in.
Yeah,
and when he runs in,
adrenaline's going, so he's acting as normal as could be.
Yeah, he runs in, and you can actually see he's been hit in the leg as soon as he comes into the hallway, sort of leading to the club. And I'm like, he's been hit in the leg, so he's actually been hit. All right, cool. And then he collapses, and then Big Mike comes over, and we see that he's actually also bleeding from his stomach. Like he's actually been hit in the abdomen. And it's like, oh shit, this is actually maybe serious. And of course, Frankie, Vincent comes running out and speaks to Frankie, and it becomes very clear that this is his last dying words. Like he's on his way out right now. Which is where we get this big final shot. So this makes a lot of sense.
Talking about something stupid.
Yeah, but this makes a lot of sense. It bookmarks bookends the episode. With Melissa's exit. So we've had 2 characters exit the show at the start and the end of this episode in very different ways. And I think this season largely is going to be about exits because even if it's not until the very final scene of the last episode, ultimately everyone's leaving the show in a way.
Well, yeah.
So. But I think this episode is about exits and where characters are leaving from here. And I think it's interesting that Melissa is going off with her father to maybe have a new, fresh start of life. Might go better. And of course, there's the debate that's brought up where Vincent tries to talk to the dad about, let the past lie and just sort of live life as it is now and be happy. And there's just that hint that, maybe he can't quite, maybe that doesn't mean he's going to be mean to her or have a strenuous relationship, but there's just that kind of response from him that kind of says, I can never truly like be okay with everything that's happened and the way she's been treated and what's been happening here. And the final line is when the roommate says, "Oh, she's got to go home," and it's like, nah, they can never go home. Not really. Like she might physically be there, she might have a new life there
but
now.
It's not the same.
But it's not going to be what it was before she left the first time. It never will be.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that applies to different characters in this episode because, I mean, you could say the same about Laurie.
Mm-hmm.
And that she comes back to New York and. Well, she's, I don't think she's from New York, if I'm recalling right.
No, she arrived in season 1.
She arrived. I thought that was her, yeah. But that was very much home for her for years, and it was where she became who she was now.
Yeah, no,
it's not the same this time.
Yeah, we got her, and then obviously, so like I say, you got Frankie leaving at the end, and I think both these characters' endings are kind of what we expected, and maybe there's almost a poignant message there of like, nah, they're ending. There's no swerve here. Like, yeah, he was always kind of doomed, and that's the way it went. And she, well, maybe it wasn't always destined to do this exact thing, and maybe it's a happier ending than we expected. It's an ending we may have considered, much like. Last season we had a similar kind of story of someone getting out of the life and someone moving on to something else. So, it's playing with those things. And, to go to Laurie next instance, you brought her up. She's back in New York because she's got an audition for a movie. It turns out to be a horror movie. There's a serial killer in it from the audition.
Yeah,
that we hear.
Yeah.
But she's we see that she's learned to play guitar. She's clearly interested in going up and doing some music, and she's getting lessons. And we see that she sucks at it, because we predicted last week that we'd have a scene this sometime this season, probably near the end, that she goes up on that stage and has her moment. But I think the way it's swerved this year is that is not the end of her story. It is merely just a step in her story of disappointment, because she goes up, she does this, she doesn't even play guitar. She's like, I'll just sing, and the other guy can play guitar.
Yeah.
She doesn't do that great. I mean, she's not terrible.
She's not terrible. It's just the crowd don't really give a shit.
Yeah, they don't really respond to her. It's basically her, manager, boyfriend, dude, and her actual agent who are there, and they kind of cheer. And she leaves the room. She tells her agent, "Hey, okay, I'll do whatever you want, because clearly I can't do anything else." This is a demoralizing thing. We were expecting this to be the uplifting ending to her story, where she does find some happiness, and this is something she wants to do. But in actual fact, it's this reminder that she can't actually. I mean, that's to say that she definitely can't do anything else, but that's how she feels. She takes it as this hit.
It is, and this is the last straw after all the stuff that happened in New York. Not just the audition, but everything else.
Yeah. Because the audition doesn't go super well. She doesn't sound excited by what the movie is when she hears about it.
No, the boyfriend's very annoyed because he was told that, hey, bring her out, and it's a lock, and it's some old friend of his, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. And Big Mike ends up seeing her on the street and sort of like goes and consoles her when she's looking upset, brings her to the club, and Vincent starts like sort of trying to catch up with her, and she's very upset.
It's quite sweet at first.
Yeah, and he sends the others out because it becomes this kind of private thing, because he starts dancing with her, and things start getting hot and heavy, and I think it's an interesting read for both characters in this scene as to why they're both doing this, like, because from her point of view, this is almost like you were saying, kind of a piece of home. It's someone who's actually treating her differently than everyone else. Because Vincent in this scene is just kind of there for her benefit. He's not trying to exploit her or anything like that.
No, but it's very familiar for her, this.
Yeah, and likewise, Vincent has kind of motivation in this scene because of what happened in his plot, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But ultimately, it has this awkward ending where it's about to get going, and he pulls out a condom, and she's like, "Wait for a blowjob? What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, it's going around." It's, "Oh, sorry, you've not been in New York. It's everywhere." And she gets very offended because it's like, "Oh wait, you think I would have that? You think that
oh, you don't trust me? I am just a whore." Is kind of how she feels.
Yeah, and she leaves. It's a really sad scene, because you almost feel really happy for both of them, because they're both in kind of rough places at this point in the episode. I mean, Vincent's pretending he's not, but he kind of is.
Oh, he is, yeah.
And it's kind of this really bittersweet moment where it kind of breaks down, and it's like, yeah, she can't come home again. And the weird thing for Vincent is that he maybe can go home again, because a big part of his plot this season is that his wife is not who she was back in season 1, and they've both kind of grown, and they've grown up a little bit, and there's clearly an attraction again between them, and we see that again back at the birthday scene where it's Vincent and Frankie, and we get a moment where literally, Frankie says to his wife, "Oh, the first birthday dance goes to my wife," and Vincent's left there at the bar, and literally his ex-wife and Abby are sitting side by side, just with smirks in their faces, waiting to see who gets picked. And of course, Abby subverts it and asks her to dance, so they dance together.
Saves him the awkwardness.
Yeah, so he just kind of watches smiling as they're dancing. They're kind of like playing it up a little bit, but it does actually kind of neatly, like her smirk as she does this and winks at him is kind of a neat little thing, because the whole plot with them in this episode is that he comes home and she's with the woman that she kind of fell for last episode, this artist that she's been seeing.
Yeah.
And at first, I actually assumed what she did. I assumed, maybe she forgot to put the thing in the door, and he's came in and caught him. He's like, "Nah,
easily done, right?"
Yeah, but it turns out no, he was just too tired. He had to come in and sleep. He's like, "I'll sleep on the couch. It's fine," which is not awkward at all, right? I'll sleep on the couch while you're having sex with someone else.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where he, when he sees it's a woman, it's very awkward, and he kind of tries to. I mean, I'll just go to sleep. I mean, unless you want an extra helping hand. I mean, I like girls, and they kind of just they just kind of stare him away because it's this intimate thing between them, and and they kind of laugh afterwards. And I do kind of feel bad for him, and I think Abby does as well, because Abby the next night when she's out with her, and the artist says, "Hey, why don't you come back to mine and just stay all night and don't go home?" Abby makes a point of calling Vincent, and we don't actually get to hear all the phone call. It's actually kind of interesting.
But her reason as well is like, hey, he's kind of upset. I'll just, actually tell him so he's not expecting me. It's again, she's very concerned about him.
But we don't get to hear the phone call, and at the end of the phone call, we hear the tail end of him just saying, "Go have fun," but he does sound a little bit agitated. This is right before Laurie comes in.
Yeah.
So again, the setup here for that scene is that he's feeling more and more alienated from Abby. And as much as it was fine for them to have this open relationship for a long time, it is starting to reach this point, and we can see it with Abby. We see it with them two in the taxi when they're just doing it in the back of the taxi as opposed to waiting to get anywhere. We see that this feels a bit more meaningful, like that she's actually falling for this person.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about it is that for the rest of the episode, Abby does kind of there's this, because again it subverts our expectations, because he comes in the morning, like we've seen him do a couple of times, both this season and last, and goes to sleep next to her and tries to put his arm around her, and she kind of like shews it away and gets up, and he's like, "Oh, just stay," and it feels like this cold kind of rejection that kind of plays into his feelings in the episode up until this point. But then she shouts, "Close your eyes," and she walks out with a little birthday cake, and it's like, "Oh, this is actually sweeter than we were expected in this scene." And then she lies next to him.
Yeah, but again, it feels sad.
Yeah.
Even after that, it feels like, okay, they both know this isn't really work.
Yeah. I mean, they know it's kind of over, and she's doing this because she still cares about him, but it's definitely not what it was. It's they're definitely moving to different places, and she's. And again, he kisses her at the after they blow out the candles and the cake, and the ex-wife is just watching with that look in her eye, like a bit of jealousy.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe it's too obvious to suggest that he'll end this season, going back with his wife and kids and living out that family life that he wants.
I think the question that Vincent needs to ask at this point is, okay, which one is home? Because I say, you say, oh, maybe he can go home, and I think he could still potentially either way.
Well, something we've been talking about since season 1 is this idea that he's eventually going to have to get out of this crime world that he's kind of locked into, and with his brother being killed at the end, and things that we know are going to be changing, in the area soon. Like, is it almost the wise choice for him to leave around now or soon? And the question, I suppose, becomes: does he get out in time? Does he get to go and have his happy ending, or does he go down with the ship?
Yeah, because we saw last season when he drove off to find somewhere else to live.
Yeah, not
just like, out of the city.
5 years ago that was as well. Keep in mind in the context of the show.
It was, yeah, but the idea of, oh no, he can get out. He knows already. He could just go and live somewhere else. He's not tied to New York explicitly.
Yeah. Well, the city, yeah, but somewhere else in the state or whatever, yeah. So no, I mean, like, I think Vincent's story is almost one of the most unpredictable ones, because even though the two solutions are really obvious, it's just a case of which way is it going to veer,
and should he succeed with those?
Yeah. And Vincent feels more deserving of a happier ending than maybe some of the other characters do.
Yeah.
in this. Also, credit to Franco for directing this episode and playing two roles at the same
Yeah,
time.
he's directed a bunch, hasn't he?
He's directed a bunch, but this one especially, I felt like because it was so Vincent and Frankie.
It was, yeah, more than some others,
Yeah,
definitely.
I was like, okay, there's so cred there, and yeah, so that was basically his. So I'm curious for that, and so we'll take the tie from Abby, which kind of leads into Eileen's stuff, which is Abby asks her to come and speak at a meeting with the Women Against Pornography because again she's not happy that they're going up to Congress and try to like get porn banned because that's the kind of against the free speech aspect.
Getting it banned at a federal level instead of just in individual states.
Yeah, so she goes in and there's a couple of other scenes with Eileen. Don't get me wrong, she's with Corey Stoll and like they're kind of, they're at these weird performance art things and
yeah, she's talent scouting.
She's talent scouting and getting kind of these weird like, oh, he played a reindeer. The actors, the whole thing.
Yes, but her whole ethos is, hey, if they can make the stupid shit sound decent, then they must be pretty good.
Yeah, that's her. So it's almost a cheat sheet. She's not even doing it properly. She's got like a really extreme like thing she's looking for.
Yeah.
So obvious
it works.
But she comes into this meeting. She's trying, and the whole point, of course, is that like like she's making porn, and the idea that her porn is for her, and it's even referred to as femmerotica and things like that. And she's trying to explain, and they're showing Red Wolf that she made last season, and like
I love that before you even see it, you hear the howling. And go, oh, they're watching that.
Yeah, we know what they're watching, and she tries to explain, what it's about and how it's about her voice, and just because others don't feel this way doesn't necessarily mean that her voice should be shut because of that. And you can kind of see where this scene's going early on, and you feel kind of uncomfortable in a way where Eileen hears a lot of things. And while you may agree or disagree with some of the things that are said, I think it's very clear that Eileen maybe didn't consider some of the things that are said to her in this scene really ever before. Where, these people who are quite rude to her, don't get me wrong, but they kind of like point out that just because you were successful in this line and because you went through prostitution and then being a porn star and then ultimately to the level of success you're at now, for every one of you there's at least a couple of dozen who haven't made it anywhere, who have died young, who have ended up somewhere else.
Yeah. And this is all fair. I think the logical response is kind of go, well, yes, let's say okay, we can have protections, but there's no need for an outright ban, right?
Yeah, she's too gobsmacked.
But she's too caught up in it, yeah.
She's too caught in the moment to think that clearly. And because when even she gets outside and Abby comes to apologise because she kind of put her in that situation, she says, maybe I need to hear some of that. Maybe these are things that she's never quite considered. And obviously we've never seen anything that suggests Eileen, her sets treat anyone badly. Everyone's, happy enough on her set and whatever, but she's never necessarily tried to look beyond that.
Interestingly enough, I think pretty much all the New York porn that we've seen on the sets has had that kind of feeling. Everyone's been pretty respectful. It was when we went to LA that it was so different.
From what we've seen, that's true. I don't necessarily think it excludes the New York stuff though. From what we've seen,
I don't think it's exclusive. It's just that we've happened to see it through a lens of characters that we know and usually are pretty decent people.
Yeah, well, I think it's that, but I think it's also like that doesn't account for the idea of like how some of the girls ended up there and why they're doing this. They're doing this because they're struggling and because they feel like they have no choice, as opposed to, I actually want to be a part of this. I'm choosing to be this because I want to be in this business.
No, that's fair.
So there's elements to it. It's definitely a nuanced conversation, which is very black and white in the scene, and maybe that's the whole point, is that black and white doesn't really quite handle a conversation like this. But it's kind of a hard hitting scene, and I think what I like about it from Eileen's perspective is that it hits her with some ideas that are something that her character hasn't really. Because Eileen's always been a character for us that has been very strong-willed, who's never had a pimp, who's been determined to make it on her own and always been independent, and she's always felt very strong because of that. But I think the interesting question here for her, reflecting on herself and us reflecting on the character is the point here not that not everyone should have to be this strong to make it. Like, some people should be able to ask for help. That, just because she was able to like force her way through, tooth and nail, and was able to stay that independent, like it shouldn't have to be that much of a lonely road. It should be something where you can rely on others. There should be a structure to help, kind of thing. And is that something that she then considers like maybe she can give back in a way or something? I don't know, but it's asking some interesting questions, and it's again. I mean, this show's got a very nuanced look at everything. It presents as characters who do look at it in very black and white, but it does give us a nuanced approach to a lot of the ideas that it's talking about.
It does, and it's funny how obviously some things have changed, but some things haven't. The idea of, I mean, just right now you have an ex Disney star going, "Hey, I'm going to direct porn because I want to," and again, it's the same idea of just strung out on the way in, and go, well, I'm doing this for me, but maybe some other people they're still not choosing necessarily. It's maybe they feel pressured.
I'm sure there's
oh yeah, of course.
Corruption and like people who are forced into it and all sorts of horrible things. Like that is definitely still a thing. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, so no, I think it's an interesting scene. It's an interesting thing to put at her character because she's been so strong the whole time, and I think it's an avenue for her character that we've not really explored from this lens. We've not really looked at it from this point of view, this side of things. We've seen her kind of succeed and sort of fight through it, but we've never really stopped to say, well, should she have had to have done it this way? Should she have had to have went through this path, kind of thing? So that's really interesting stuff. And there's lots of other little tidbits, of course, throughout the episode. We have Black Frankie is arrested for attempted murder, even though we know he was trying to save someone's life, because the John at the hotel
wanted them to feed him something.
Lobster. It was lobster.
Lobster. That was it.
You don't forget a detail like that.
Well, clearly you do.
Why did he feed him lobster whilst they got off? Was the phrase that was used. And Frankie tries to do the pen trick with his throat, but it looks. But the people who run in, the hotel security or whoever who run in, just assume he's trying to kill him.
I mean, it does look like he's just stabbed a dude in the throat with a pen.
It does. It does. It makes sense to me. I know what he's doing, but yeah.
Yeah. We know that, and we know. Hey, he's a good guy. He's doing his best.
He's doing his best. Yeah. So that's a knot that has to be untied. Rudy's also pissed that the girls are out on calls so often that there's no one left at the parlor to take care of him.
Can't get laid in his own whorehouse. He's pretty disappointed.
That was the phrase, yes. So they're calling around. Rudy's been stressed because business ain't doing so hot as we see. Yeah. Although I mean, obviously these call-outs are doing well, as Bobby tells us in the episode. But yeah. And another big plot, of course, is Alston try to deal with this building, this hotel that's being used by the prostitutes. Has some of the cops undercover. They arrest some people. Basically, they're trying to do enough arrests and get enough convictions from that on that premises to be able to lock it up. But even then, there's legal red tape to jump through. The frustration here is that a lot of the law is kind of done in the favor of property owners, like which goes back to property being 9/10 of the law. I guess in the actual paperwork that's still true.
Yeah, and it's also just about the timing. It's like, yeah, we've got enough to actually have a case here, or we will do, given a little bit more time.
Yeah,
but it's not quick enough to solve the problem.
So he goes to the Karate Kid to do something a little bit off books.
Yeah.
Do something a bit shady. And this is something we'll never really see Elston do, I don't think, is go outside the law to achieve something quick enough. And, gets a bit of arson. bit arson done. So the fire marshal comes in and, pulls apart at it. It's, I don't know, interesting little beat. But he does also, him and the lady cop that he's been into, also shack up. So, that's good on, yeah.
Yeah. Again, things just moving forward over there.
Things moving forward, and
still feels quite separate to everyone else. But I mean, I'm sure it'll play in.
Well, I think it's always going to feel separate until literally the effect of them, changing the neighborhood kicks in. I think it's the whole point is that it's kind of like this umbrella over everything.
I think it feels separate at the minute because if you go back to the start of the show when when the cops and the pimps and the girls were all having their standoffs and with the vans. It didn't feel very separate then, but these days it does. I'm sure again, I say it'll come back together at the end.
Yeah. No, you're right. So, no, I mean, that was pretty much the episode. It was a very strong one again. I think 3 and 4 really upped the ante from the first couple. A lot more strong emotional beats. It's really prodding at interesting questions. Looking at things because the whole protest and stuff especially has been very kind of like a background thing up until this point, and this is the first time I think it's really been like shove's not the right word, but like unleashed onto one of our main characters, where the questions really matter now. Like where Like before, it was like, okay, it's doing this almost as like just like AIDS in the sense that it's okay, part of the time period, it's something that's going on, and it's like some sort of background history things that are happening. But this is the first time it feels like, no, it's directly actually affecting the choices that one of our main characters is making. So now we're actually really prodding at it and thinking about, what does this mean? How does this work for a character like Eileen? How does this affect her judgment? Does she change the way she does things because of it? Does it inform who she is? Does it do anything? Does she reconsider how she is because it's making a character maybe think that way, at least a little bit? It feels a lot more relevant now than it was before. So it's a big episode in that sense because it's pulling things that way. Also, slight filmmaking touch I liked when Alston goes to talk to the Karate Kid and they clear out the little office area so that it's just them talking. There's one shot where it cuts to the opposite side of the line, and if you don't know what I mean by that, there's a rule in filmmaking. Sometimes it's called the 180 degrees rule. Sometimes it's called crossing the line, where you've got a line between your two actors, and you always kind of shoot them from that same side. So all the shots are all on the same side. And sometimes you do cross the line for an effect, and sometimes depending on what's happening, you can break the rule. Whatever, filmmakers can do it for effect. Here it's used for like a two-layered thing. On the one hand, it's because someone walks into the room and it's them looking over at him as he walks past to make sure he's gone, and they have to show the other side of the room for that to make sense. Not necessarily. You could make the choice to just show it from past the guy's shoulder or something like that as he walks past.
You could, but it's an obvious way of showing it.
Yeah, but it's an obvious way to choose to do it. But the real reason for this shot, I think works for the scene here.
It's pretty clear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that Alston is crossing a line. He is literally crossing a line by coming and asking for this favor. Yeah. Well, I say favor. I mean, Karate Kid does say it's going to cost a lot, so presumably he gets paid. but
but I mean. Yeah, he's crossing this line that he never usually does. He's usually very moral and letter of the law and all that.
Yeah.
And this time he's going, do you know what? Maybe you dirty guys have something I need.
Yeah. So there you go. And it's worth mentioning that this is all about money because it's all about this $30 million development fund.
Yeah, which is why it needs to go so fast because they're not willing to wait longer for it to go through the full process.
So just a little bit of filmmaking there. I thought was just a simple little thing, but it was because this show, while it's very confidently directed, doesn't tend to be too flashy. It doesn't tend to have a lot.
It's not flashy, no. But it knows what it's doing. It always works for its the effect that it's going for. And this here, I mean, even this isn't a particularly flashy trick, right? But it's a conscious choice that it made for a reason. Not, it wasn't a mistake. It was like, no, we know what we're doing. We know why we're doing this now, and it'll work. Yeah.
Also, Connor's got his phone vibrating on mic, like a unprofessional bastard. How dare he?
You say that. It's been vibrating the entire time, and that's the first time it's been picked up.
Picked up once is enough. I don't care.
Well,
unprofessional.
I thought it was safe, clearly, because it hasn't moved.
Unprofessional. Therefore, it's not safe. Therefore, it was you can't have it there and not have it silenced.
Well, there was a reasonable assumption when it had gone off 3 or 4 times already and it wasn't being picked up, and then it didn't move, and this time for some reason it did. I don't know what happened there.
You can't wrangle your way out of this. You messed up, and that's the end of it. All right, that's just it. Anyway, that has been a review of the Deuce episode 4, season 3. Let us know what you think of the episode in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month and keep all the content coming, and feel warm and fuzzy in the inside and get some extras and bonuses for your troubles. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?